please define what systemic risk is and how that differs from cognitive risk.
I think systemic risk is partially filled with this idea of cognitive risk, our beliefs, our intentions in the attackers and in the defenders that we really need to think about and explode some of those assumptions, make them more explicit, and then try to actually engineer against them.
I like to think of systemic risk beyond the internal systemic risk of how risk flows through the various layers of organizational management. We're so caught up in managing our own teams and business strategies, we rarely give much thought to looking at a bigger picture of how does our risk appetite, tolerance, and capacity affect our industry peers.
There's also the aspect of it of what risk should a business be taking? Security is not in the business of getting rid of risk. It's just mitigating it to a point that the business can afford.
This is probably the wrong word to use, but I think that you have to come back to humility and the understanding of where you lie in the scheme of things. You can outwardly project ego and confidence and inwardly still understand the impact that something could have.
Bryn, you have a question, a comment. What is it?
Nobody generally gets ego from just thinking that they have it. So there's that confidence and that level of competence that you get just from practicing that I think is separate from just having an ego that I can do this because I think I can.
I think that it can be detrimental to a team to get to the point where you're saying, oh, we can't fail. You're never going to continue to learn and grow and transform with cyber, with any industry, if you don't have failures and setbacks here and there, because those are opportunities to learn.
Look at what FireEye did when they got hacked, right? They shot the hostage. They said, hey, the bad guys took our red team tools. Here's how our red team tools work. Basically, they're robbing that theft of any value. And I think that kind of transparency is important.
We have Dutch wearing a very, very nice sweatshirt, I should mention. Dutch, what you got for us?
Let's talk about failure. If you think that the goal is to not fail, I actually think that that's a bad framing, right? So what you should be doing is saying, we anticipate that there's going to be an unexpected risk. How do we respond to that? How do you frame it?
What's going to get you ahead is to have a really sound response plan. So it's going to be the time to containment and how quickly and with the velocity and veracity that you can respond to an incident.
I think the resilience and focus on resilience is way more important than failure avoidance, because you will fail. Systems do fail. Have a good response plan. Own that narrative. Don't let the internet write it for you, right? Have something published and ready to go ahead of time that says, yes, this event happened, and here's what we're doing to fix it.
I appreciate this bad idea that's come in. Your goal, Krista and Mike, is to beat the bad ideas, to contain this. When presented with risk, follow the rules of improv and agree, then say yes and to assume even more risk.
Let's say that someone says, we have a risk because we have no backups. Then wipe all the backups, destroy all the tapes, live free, fly in the moment.
Pretty simply, I would verify the validity of that approach and the risk calculation with an abacus, because old school is the best school. And then I would use Gorilla Glue as my mitigant. The internet tells me that Gorilla Glue can fix any problem. So
how are you overcoming cognitive risk? Has there been a scenario where you identified this is cognitive risk and you did something to either innovate out of it or something else to manage that risk?
The lack of understanding of cognitive risk itself is an inherent risk of a business. How we overcome it is educating and partnering and, becoming a trusted advisor where, you will be heard and you will have a seat at the table and, you're respected by your leadership.
Focus on documentation and to improve documentation. When you have tribal knowledge and you don't have explicit documentation, you actually end up with a lot of risk, and it's kind of, held together by this belief that someone's going to raise, up and figure out how to put it back together.
This is Matthew Bibby, last week's winner of What's Worth It. So Matthew, go ahead and give us the two scenarios.
So the first one is ask SolarWinds intern to assess risk. And the second one is delegate the risk management to the newbie and focus on the important stuff.
I would definitely pick the intern as my favorite worst idea, because you have a higher chance that they're really a brilliant person and they assess the risk really, really well. But the newbie, you hired them into a low pay grade and they can't be brilliant. They have to be learning. They don't have all the knowledge.
I'm going to go with the new hire simply because they're going to have a stake in your organization. But I find that consultants or people who don't have a stake in what they're doing can, fudge a report and put it together and then just walk away and leave you with the garbage and say, here, have fun. This is my opinion. Have a nice day.
Sounds good. Split decision, right?
This is a very good question Ian Pointer puts up. How do you handle the misperception of risk in your organization?
I've observed what you might call the inverted pyramid, right? Where you have like 8 people that are accountable and measurable and responsible for risk at the management level, but you only have 1 or 2 people actually doing anything about it. I think just pointing out the absurdity of the headcount and how it's usually top heavy, and you can free up some resources to do work rather than wring their hands about it at the executive level all day.
Get yourself a seat at the table, especially if you're in cyber. I think it'll definitely help the business understand your standpoint, just like it'll help you understand what the business's initiatives are, quantify as best as possible, and to focus on the cognitive risk, right? And try to change the mindset through education and again, through partnership and being a trusted advisor.
Everyone has hundreds or thousands of third-party service providers at this point. There is no digital business that is not online. Go to Security Scorecard, get your free login, start looking at what's happening there. There's incredible insights, and you don't have to pay to play. We're very much transparent. We have a trust portal that explains how we do our scoring. And if you see something wrong, contact us and we'll get it fixed. You don't have to pay to change information about your digital footprint.